Hello everybody, I'm Ulrich with your Fix It Auto, and today I'm really excited to show you, finally, the reassembly process of the front end of my Supernatural Tribute car. Now this is a Tribute, I'm not making it an exact replica, so I will be doing some upgrades. Unfortunately, the original control arms didn't pan out, so instead I picked this kit up. It came with the lower control arms and the upper control arms for roughly about $580, and I also picked up a kit of coilovers. This is actually going to be an upgrade because of its adjustability. The main reason why you want to go towards something like this is because of its adjustability. And the thing that's nice about these control arms is not only can you use the original coil spring setup, but it allows you to mount the coilover set as well. And these do come powder coated, as well as they allow you to use the original ball joints on them as well. So that's a really nice feature. And I do have the uppers, I just don't have them out of the box yet. And all that's going into this. I did also go through with a rust preventative. It's called POR 15. I'll be doing a separate video on how to do that. I only did it on the one side to see how I like it. The other side is actually normal. So I will be making a video to show you how I'm going to be doing it on that end as well. With all that said and done, let's get to it. And so one of the things that I ended up doing was I ended up getting the sway bar powder coated. They did a great job over here at Armor Coatings down in Taylorsville here in Utah. So making sure that our sway bars are nice and firm in place. I'm going to be putting new bushings on there. First thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be grabbing some grease, and I'm going to be putting it all along the inside. And then I'm going to be attaching the bracket right on there. Putting in the bolts, and then a lock washer and the nut on top. And then I just got them started so that way a little bit of thread is showing. And then I'll be putting in some blue medium strength thread locker. And then I will take my electric wrench with my 1/2 inch extended socket right here, and then I'll have an open end wrench on top. And then do the same thing to the other side, and then that'll keep it in place. And then the next step is to grab the lower control arm. And you want to grab the one, so this is the front of the car. And so what I'll be doing is I'm going to make sure that this little slot is going to be towards the sway bar, because that's where the sway bar end links will mount. And they also come with these. The way that these work is that they go on each end. Now the trick is to get it to stay in place, because it matches up with this hole. What you're going to make sure you want to do is you want to make sure that you put it in just like this, and that you're able to get the big bolt through both of these. So we just got to mount it into place. And the goal here is to get the big bolt started. Just have it so it's barely poking through. Okay, the walls will keep the bushings in place. And then just got to feed the bolt through. And with the bolt all the way through, the next step is to grab this metal washer with the little notched edge over here. There is going to be a notched edge on the bolt, so you just want to make sure that it slips in and so that it only fits one way. Get the lock washer on there. But before we tighten it all the way down, I'm just going to put some blue medium strength thread locker on this area right over here. And then tighten it as much as I can by hand. Now the reason why I decided to upgrade the lower control arms is primarily because not only can you use it with a traditional coil spring setup, if you just remove this, as you can see here, these are cut out, so that way they can fit a coilover kit. If you look at the stock lower control arms, and you could do the same thing, you can cut out notches in order to be able to fit it. Next step is to remove the coil spring mount. And before putting it in there, I'm just going to remove the warning sticker and as much residue as I can. Next, I'm going to feed through my coilover shock. Like I said, this might take a little bit of gentle persuasion, but eventually it should come through the notches. It took a little bit, but I was finally able to get it to go through. And then I thread through my 5/16" by 1" bolt that I got at my local hardware store. And after threading these in by hand, I'm going to put in some blue thread locker onto the bolts and then tighten it down. And now we coat the threads with a light coat of aluminum anti-seize. Try to wipe away any excess. You just want to make sure there's a nice thin layer to prevent it from galling. Next, we install the locking ring. This also does help spread the anti-seize a little bit. And the goal is just to get it on the last thread without going all the way down. And then we mount the seat and get that all the way down. And now we grab the metal washer, put a little bit of anti-seize on there, not too much, just a light coat, and then just put it all along the washer. Then we can put that right on the seat. Then we can get the spring on there, and then we can try and see if we can get it into place. Then we put the rubber, and then we put the washer, and then you tighten the nut on there. You can get a decent amount in by hand. One thing to note while I was doing this is I wanted to make sure that the rod was completely up by making sure that the single adjustable was all the way into the negative, so that way it could easily push up. And then I tightened it up so that way I can get the top part on there and enough through so that way I could get this all put in there. We are actually going to leave the coilover in its lowest setting, so that way it gives us a little bit of flexibility to move this around as we assemble everything together. After this thing is fully assembled, that's when we'll actually start tightening things up and then playing with the firmness setting on the coilover. Next, I move on to the upper control arm. So I'm just going to fit it behind and then stick the bolt in from behind as well. Get in the lock washers and then thread in the nuts by hand. If you wanted to, then this is where you put the alignment shims. It's just going to be going in between the control arm and the mounting bracket. And now is also a good time to get rid of the bump stop that's here. The new upper control arm is actually going to have it already installed, and you don't want to have two bump stops hitting each other. So now's a good time to remove that. I am going to be getting another bump stop for the lower control arms. It just bolts in over here, but they take time in order to come in. Mine is actually back ordered. It's important not to forget that. I'm just going to leave that out for now. It also doesn't hurt to put a little bit of blue Loctite on these bolts as well, which I did. I didn't forget. With an 11/16 socket on one side and a 5/8 wrench on the other side. I'll just torque this down to 75 foot-pounds. And then we can bring the control arm down. Remove the cotter pin and castle nut from both the upper and lower ball joints. Now I'm going to put a block of wood on a jack, and I'm going to see if I can go from the side and jack this up and make sure that the jack is actually not in the way of me being able to put the steering knuckle, because that's next. It's also a good time to mention to make sure that the setting for this is actually on the lowest setting. On the highest setting, it's going to be difficult for it to push up. This will get it easy to push up to the point where it hits the coil spring, and then the jack can help get the coil spring compressed a little bit just to get the knuckle on there. And now with it a decent amount compressed in, we can attach the lower ball joint with the castle nut, and then get the upper ball joint as well, and get the castle nut in its place as well. With a 7/8 socket and torque wrench, I'm going to torque the lower ball joint to 80 pound-feet, and then torque the upper to 50 pound-feet. And now is a good time to put in the cotter pin. If yours does not align with the castle nut holes over here, then it means that you just need to tighten it. You never loosen it in order to get it to fit, even though it would make it easy here since it's just one tiny little turn back. Regardless, you always want to tighten in order to get it to line up. And now we can fit the cotter pin in and bend one of the legs back in order to get it to stay in place. Now we do the same thing to the lower ball joint. Cotter pin in, leg out, and we're good to go here. Next, it's time for the sway bar end link, and as you can see here how it's pre-assembled, this is the way that it's supposed to go on. There's the washer, big bushing, and then the lower control arm goes here, then the small bushing, and then another washer, and then you have the little middle part, and then you have another washer, then you have the small bushing, then that's where the sway bar goes, and then this is a big bushing washer, and then you have your lock nut. All we have to do is replicate this onto our lower control arm. Stick it through, put the bushing, put the washer, the little metal bar, just like that. Got the big bushing. So normally from here, this is actually a simple copy and paste job. Here we have the old tie rod in the exact length and what it needs to be, and all this does is just thread through. But unfortunately, this does not thread in. There's an issue with this adjustment sleeve that I ordered from Moog. The first one that I had fit perfectly, and that's how I know this is actually the right one. But unfortunately, the one that just came inside of this box does not work. So I had to order a new one, so that will have to wait. But that's no big deal. That will come in Wednesday. I'll just make sure to tighten this all down, and then once it's all in, then you just have to make sure this is nice and tight in order to get the tie rods to hold in place, and then we can get that assembly in. But now I'm going to move on to the strut rod. So I'm going to grab the new polyurethane bushing and slip it in. So this little metal ring is actually going to be towards the body, and then I'm going to put in this sleeve and then fit it through here. Grab the two strut rod bolts, and then get some medium strength thread locker and put it right on the threads right up top. Feed those through the hole. And then from underneath, get a lock washer and then the nut on. And then with a 5/8 up top and 11/16 torque wrench on bottom, we can torque these bolts down to 70 pound-feet. Now on this end, we just want to get the bushing on there and then get the nut started. I'm actually going to avoid torquing that one down for now, and the reason why is because when it comes to rubber bushings, then you want to make sure that they're actually under load. Like for example, the strut rod bushing, the sway bar end link, and the bushing that goes from the lower control arm up to the body. All of that has to be under load, and what that means is the weight of the car has to be on it. And in order for you to be able to do that, then all you have to do is grab the jack, go from underneath, and jack up the car. And then you just simply go until the car lifts up from the ground. And that'll mean that the weight of the car is on the suspension, and then you can torque it down. Otherwise, you're going to risk twisting that rubber, and it just makes the life of these bushings go a lot less. And as you guys notice, I'm missing quite a bit of weight. I'm actually missing the fenders, I'm missing the core support, I'm missing the front end. I'm pretty much missing almost everything on there, so I'm actually going to wait to torque all that down. But just so you guys know, it is 70 pound-feet for the strut rod. These go between 10 and 15, and then the lower control arm to the body is roughly about 115 pound-feet, or as my German friends say from the 1967 Chevy Impala Facebook chat, guten tight. Just make sure that it's all under load before you start doing anything. And then the tie rods, I'm waiting for that center part in order to come in, and then I'll just throw that on there. And if you're wanting the torque spec to that, it is between 30 and 35 pound-feet to torque those down on both ends to the center link and to the knuckle. And as well as the shock, I want to make sure that I get the frame on there, and so I'm waiting until I get the body nuts, so that way I can go around and I can put brand new body mounts, put the fenders on, and then I can check the ride height, and then I'll be torquing the bushings on here. I'll be sure to keep you guys updated, but I will, just so you guys know, I will have the original upper and lower control arms, the coil springs, and I'll have shocks ready just in case this doesn't pan out. The old setup that I had before, it's actually a pretty reliable setup. These coilovers, they are new technology. They are pretty reliable depending on which brand that you got. I decided to give these QA1s a try, but you never know what may happen, so it's always good to have the original stuff on hand in case you do need to swap things out. I am excited to test out this coilover setup. I'll be sure to give you guys live updates on how this holds up over time. I know this is not going to be my daily driver. This is going to be a little toy car. Once it's all finished, I'll just be taking out every once in a while. After I get everything assembled, then I'm actually going to start putting this car back together, and I'll make a video on that. So stay tuned for that, and I've still got more videos for you guys. And so thank you guys so much for your support. Please be sure to give a like to this video, and if you're not already, please subscribe and share these videos. It really does help me out, and thank you guys so much for watching.